Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a woman who seems completely in control of her world? She's confident, composed, maybe even intimidating, and yet there's a moment, a small shift, where her defenses seem to melt. Her body softens, her eyes linger a second too long. What just happened? No, it wasn't charm, it wasn't money, it wasn't manipulation. It was the result of something far deeper. The truth is this: every woman, no matter how independent she appears, has emotional pressure points that trigger intense desire. They aren't obvious, they're hidden, and once you know how to activate them, everything changes. This video isn't about tricking anyone, it's about understanding the ancient instincts, emotional triggers, and psychological needs that shape female attraction at the deepest level. Most men never learn this, but those who do, they don't just attract women. They leave a lasting impact. So buckle up, because we're diving into 10 hidden psychological triggers that make women obsessed, loyal, and emotionally attached, even when they don't understand why. Let's start with something that most men overlook: touch. Not sexual touch, not invasive or aggressive, but simple, intentional, emotionally calibrated touch. Why does this matter? Because while words appeal to the conscious mind, touch bypasses logic and speaks directly to the subconscious. It's how human beings communicated safety, warmth, and trust long before language existed. Now here's where it gets interesting. Modern dating advice tells men to use their words. But science and real-world experience shows that the right touch at the right moment can completely shift a woman's emotional state. Let me give you an example. There was a guy I knew in college, nothing flashy about him. No six-pack, no designer clothes. But every time he talked to a woman, he'd do this one thing. During a conversation, he'd occasionally place a light touch on her forearm or guide her gently as they moved through a crowd. Not creepy, not calculated, just grounded and natural. And guess what? Women responded. They leaned in, smiled more, opened up. Because their body registered something their mind couldn't fully explain: comfort plus strength plus connection. Here's the science: studies show that physical touch increases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, especially in women. It creates a feeling of safety and emotional intimacy, even in a casual setting. But here's what separates the amateur from the master: touch should be sporadic, not constant. It should be light, not lingering. It should feel instinctual, not forced. Because when you're relaxed and present in your body, she feels it. And when she starts to associate your presence with that kind of emotional tension, she starts craving it. Not because you're manipulating her, but because you've created a safe space for her femininity to unfold. Women don't just respond to words. They respond to how you make them feel in your presence. And touch used wisely is one of the fastest ways to bypass her mental filters. When you walk with her, offer your hand to guide her. When you make a point during a conversation, gently touch her hand or shoulder. When you say goodbye, linger just half a second longer. That subtle pause. It plants a seed of connection. Let's be honest, scarcity is seductive. It's not just a principle in marketing or economics. It's wired into our biology, and when it comes to female attraction, this principle becomes almost magnetic. Here's the truth most men never accept. The more available you are, the less she values your presence. The more you make her guess, the more she thinks about you. This isn't about being emotionally unavailable or playing games. It's about showing that your life is already full with or without her. Now let me take you into a personal story. A guy I coached, we'll call him Leo, was constantly chasing this one woman. She liked him, but she always kept him at arm's length. He texted first. He initiated every conversation. He was the emotional giver, always available at a moment's notice. And she kept pulling away. So I gave him one simple piece of advice. Stop making her the center of your schedule. Start investing in his passions again. Reconnect with his friends. Stop replying instantly. Stop trying to win her over. What happened? Within 2 weeks, she reached out first. Then she started liking old pictures on his Instagram. Then came the "I miss you" message. Why? Because the second she felt like she was no longer his priority, her subconscious flipped. Suddenly he was less certain, less secure, and more valuable. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. When something is less available, we value it more. In dating, this principle creates tension. And tension is the oxygen of attraction. Women don't consciously want a man who's distant, but they obsess over the man who isn't always easy to have, because he makes them feel like they need to earn his presence. Let's break this down. If you text her every morning with "Good morning, beautiful," she'll smile at first, but grow bored over time. If you always say yes to plans and never seem busy, she'll begin to assume you're not in high demand. If you're too emotionally available too soon, she'll feel smothered, not special. But if she's unsure when she'll hear from you next, she checks her phone more. If she senses you're not glued to your phone waiting for her message, she gets curious. If she feels she's not the only one who wants your time, her desire intensifies, because now your attention is no longer free. It's earned, and what's earned is treasured. Attention is only powerful when it's rare. Show her that you value your time, and she'll start valuing you more. Let her reach out first sometimes. Be okay with silence. Let space build tension, and above all, stop trying to prove your worth. Instead, live in a way that shows it. Let's clear something up. Women don't fall in love with logic. They fall in love with how you make them feel. Now, most men assume the way to win a woman's heart is through stability, predictable schedules, good manners, zero conflict. And yes, that's what many women say they want. But in reality, what keeps her hooked? What makes her think about you at 1 a.m. while staring at the ceiling isn't peace. It's emotional contrast. Let me explain. Our brains are wired to release dopamine, the chemical of anticipation and excitement, when emotions shift. That's why roller coasters are thrilling. That's why people get addicted to gambling even when they lose. And that's why women become emotionally addicted to men who make them feel something intense and then pull away. This doesn't mean you need to be toxic. This isn't about emotional manipulation. It's about understanding a simple truth. Predictability is comforting, but it rarely creates obsession. Let me share a real story. A woman I know, we'll call her Claire, was in a relationship with a perfect guy. He texted her every day, picked her up on time, planned dinners, never argued. Sounds ideal, right? After a few months, she confessed something to a friend. He's great, but I feel like something's missing. There's no spark. Contrast that with a guy she met months later, less polished, more spontaneous. He challenged her opinions. He disappeared for a weekend, then showed up and took her on an impromptu trip. He made her laugh one day and left her wondering the next. Guess who she became obsessed with? It's not because chaos is better, it's because contrast is emotionally engaging. Women crave that inner friction, that back and forth energy, the mystery, the moments that make them question what will happen next. If a woman always knows what you'll say, where you'll be, how you'll respond, she'll feel emotionally full. But if she feels a bit off balance around you, if you surprise her emotionally, challenge her gently, break routine without warning, she starts to feel, and those feelings, they stick. Emotional intensity creates memory. Predictability fades. Surprise lasts. Don't reveal everything. Occasionally disappear for a reason. Let her wonder. Make her laugh, then challenge her with a bold question. Keep her on her toes, not by being erratic, but by staying unreadable. This isn't a license to play games or hurt people. It's a reminder that tension, when mixed with warmth, builds lasting emotional gravity. She hears hundreds of voices every day, from co-workers, from friends, from social media, from men trying too hard to impress. But only a few, a very rare few, have the kind of voice that lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends. Why? Because tone is everything. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. A deep, calm, grounded voice doesn't just communicate words, it communicates certainty. It signals to her nervous system. This man is in control. He's not here to prove anything. He's already enough. And here's the wild part. Women don't just hear tone, they feel it. A recent study from the University of Aberdeen found that women are naturally more drawn to men with lower-pitched, slower voices, not because of how they sound, but because of what they imply: strength, confidence, and superior genetics. Now let me show you how this plays out in real life. I had a client, let's call him David. Charismatic, funny. But when he talked to women, he always rushed, filled silence, laughed too much, spoke too fast, like he was trying to win approval with every sentence. I told him, stop trying to fill space. Let your voice do the heavy lifting. So he slowed down. He stopped over-explaining. He lowered his tone. He spoke with stillness, not speed. The next date, she leaned in more, laughed less, smiled softer, and afterwards she texted him one sentence: "Your voice is dangerous." That's the power of vocal control. When you speak like a man who doesn't need her to approve, she listens differently. Because you're not just talking to her mind, you're bypassing it and speaking to something deeper. Here's the formula. Slow down. Fast talk signals nervousness. Pause. Silence creates anticipation. Lower your pitch. You don't need to fake it. Just relax your chest. Vary your rhythm. The best storytellers keep women hooked with pace, tone, and timing. And remember, silence is often sexier than speech. That pause right before you respond, that slight delay when she asks you a personal question, it builds tension, it makes her lean in, because now you're not just speaking, you're pulling her in without even touching her. Your voice is an invisible hand. Use it to touch her without ever laying a finger. Practice reading a paragraph out loud twice. First the way you normally speak, then again 30% slower with intentional pauses. You'll notice something: the second version feels more powerful, and she will feel it too. Let me ask you something subtle. Have you ever noticed that when a woman thinks you're being chased by other women, suddenly her interest spikes? She starts texting faster, starts watching your Instagram stories again. Suddenly her attention, previously calm, is now alert, competitive, even anxious. This is no coincidence. You've just triggered one of the most primal instincts in female attraction. Jealousy rooted in social proof. Let's unpack this. Throughout history, women have instinctively sought partners who are desirable to other women. Not because they want drama, but because it signals one thing. This man has value. Not theoretical value, not potential value, but visible, proven value in the real world. Here's what happens deep in her subconscious. If other women want him, he must be worth wanting. You don't need to be a celebrity. You don't need a harem. But if she senses even slightly that you're in demand, that other women find you attractive, her competitive instinct ignites. Now let me share something raw. A woman I dated once admitted, "I didn't even know if I liked you that much, until I saw how the waitress looked at you. One glance. That's all it took." Because her subconscious whispered, "Wait, if someone else sees value here, maybe I'm missing something." And this goes far beyond physical appearance. A man who carries himself with quiet confidence, who doesn't need female attention to validate him, who seems like his energy would be difficult to replace, that is the man she begins to fear losing. And that fear, that's fuel for desire. But here's the key distinction. This is not about manipulation, not about trying to make her jealous with games or lies. That backfires. It's about living a life so full, so magnetic, so naturally attractive that women notice without you ever trying. And when she sees that, when she realizes you're not sitting by your phone hoping she texts back, she starts chasing. You don't need to talk about other women. You just need to show through your actions and presence that you're already valuable with or without her. Post photos doing things you love with friends, family, your craft. Don't overshare, just live. Let her see that your life is already full, and if she wants in, she'll have to earn her spot. You want to know what kills desire faster than rejection? Certainty. The moment a woman knows she has you, when there's nothing left to wonder, no puzzle to solve, no distance to close, her desire begins to fade. Not because she's ungrateful, not because she's shallow, but because desire lives in the unknown. Let me break this down. Attraction is like fire. Too much distance and it flickers out, but too much closeness too soon and it smothers. Women don't crave perfection. They crave tension, the sweet, unbearable tension between almost and not yet, between wanting and waiting, between knowing and wondering. Let me give you a story you won't forget. One of my closest friends, Jack, was dating a woman who was used to attention. Men always confess their feelings too early. They bought flowers, texted paragraphs, rushed into "what are we" talks within weeks. Jack, he didn't play that game. He liked her, yes, but he never rushed the story. They went on 5 dates before he kissed her. He complimented her, but sparingly. And even when she hinted at feelings, he'd simply smile and say, "Let's not ruin this by naming it too fast." She was addicted. Not to him per se, but to the space he created. Space where she could wonder, space where she had to earn each next step, space where her imagination worked harder than his effort ever had to. That's the secret most men miss. When you give a woman too much too soon, when you reveal your whole hand without invitation, when you skip past the mystery, you rob her of the pleasure of pursuit. And yes, women love to chase, not in the same way men do, but emotionally. They crave a journey, not a destination. Here's how tension plays out in real attraction. The pause before a first kiss. The moment you lean in and then pull back. The text she waits for. That doesn't come right away. The dinner where you're warm, charming, but not needy. Every bit of space of incompleteness creates mental friction, and friction creates obsession. Tension isn't cruelty. It's the container where desire grows. A woman must wonder a little. Not because you're withholding, but because you respect the pace of seduction. Don't answer her text the moment you see it. Let it breathe. Don't overshare your feelings on date 2. Let your energy speak before your words do. Create pauses in conversation. Let her fill the silence. That's where emotional gravity builds. Let me tell you a truth that most men never hear. Women don't fall in love with who you are. They fall in love with how they feel when you're gone. That's the fantasy effect. It's not manipulation, it's not game playing. It's understanding that imagination is a far more powerful aphrodisiac than information. Here's the mistake most men make. They try too hard to be transparent. They answer every question directly. They over-explain their emotions, their intentions, their whole life story up front. And while honesty is essential, exposure kills mystery. Women don't want to figure you out in 5 minutes. They want to wonder. They want to feel something unfolding slowly, bit by bit, like pages of a novel they can't stop reading. Let me take you into a vivid real-world story. A woman I know, we'll call her Eliza, once told me about a man she dated only briefly. They had 3 dates. That's it. But for months afterwards, she found herself thinking about him. Not because he was the richest or the best looking, but because he was hard to define. He never overshared. He smiled but didn't flatter. He told stories but left out details. He made her feel something but never told her exactly what. And in the silence between texts, in the space between their last date and his disappearance, she built a story around him, a romantic myth. And the thing about myths, they linger longer than men who try too hard to be understood. This is what most guys don't realize. The more you tell her, the less room she has to imagine, and imagination is the cradle of desire. This is why celebrities seem so irresistible. It's not because women know them, it's because they're just out of reach. Mystery builds magnetism. Here's how you create the fantasy effect. Leave some things unsaid, let her ask. Don't post every moment of your life online. Let her wonder what you're doing. Share stories, but let her fill in the blanks. When she asks about your past, don't give her a file. Give her a riddle. You don't become unforgettable by giving her everything. You become unforgettable by giving her just enough for her to want more. Don't try to be predictable. Let her mind do the chasing. Because when she starts crafting stories in her head about who you are, you've already won more than attraction. You've entered her imagination. Let's get one thing straight. Women do not want to be controlled. They don't want dictators. They don't want boys who bark orders and puff their chest. But they do want a man who leads with quiet certainty, who knows what he wants, who moves through life like his direction is internal, not based on her reaction. This is the authority effect, and it's one of the deepest triggers of feminine attraction. Here's what most people get wrong. In today's world of equality, sensitivity, and politeness, men are afraid to lead. They ask too often, hesitate too much, and second-guess everything from where to eat to whether or not they should make the first move. But here's what women will rarely tell you directly. When a man won't lead, they feel emotionally unsafe, not because he's weak, but because he's unreliable. And no woman, no matter how modern, bold, or successful, wants to feel like she's the one driving everything. I remember coaching a woman named Serena. Brilliant. Ran her own business, multi-city clients. And yet when we talked about dating, she confessed, "I'm tired of being the man in every relationship. I want to relax, but I can't trust any guy to take the wheel." That hit me. Because it's a common silent frustration among women who've had to become their own rock. They want to rest in their femininity, but can't find a man strong enough to carry the weight. Here's what that looks like in action. A man who says, "We're going here Friday night, I'll pick you up at 7. A man who listens but doesn't ask for permission to be himself. A man who invites her into his world, not someone who asks to be let into hers. And when she feels that, when she senses that he's grounded in who he is, that his decisions don't wobble with her mood swings, that he can absorb emotion without reacting like a child, she surrenders. Not out of weakness, but because she finally feels safe enough to drop the armor. The masculine leads not with domination, but with direction. And the feminine responds when she no longer has to hold the steering wheel. Make decisions, not demands. Be clear, not forceful. Show her that you can carry your life so she doesn't have to carry the relationship. Because when a woman sees that you don't need her to lead you, she starts wanting to follow you, not blindly, but willingly. You've heard it before. I just want a good man, someone stable, someone kind. And that's true, on the surface. But underneath, in the part of her that she doesn't always show, she craves intensity. She wants to feel something, not just comfort, not just security, but energy, motion, fire. Because here's the truth. A woman doesn't stay because of what makes sense. She stays because of what makes her feel alive. That's why the most perfect guy often loses her attention. He's too stable, too predictable, and the emotional rhythm of the relationship becomes flat. But the man who knows how to spark emotional highs and lows, He becomes unforgettable, not because he's toxic, but because he knows how to make her feel. Let me show you how this works. There was a guy I knew, Darren. He wasn't rich, he wasn't model handsome, but when he was with a woman, he became her entire emotional environment. He teased her, challenged her, sometimes disappeared for 2 days, then came back with a spontaneous plan. He knew when to flirt, when to provoke, when to listen. And more than anything, he created moments. Moments she couldn't explain. Moments that made her laugh, cry, blush, question, wonder. And that emotional range, that unpredictability, it worked like a drug. Because it created an emotional addiction. A roller coaster where she didn't know what to expect next, but she knew she couldn't stop riding. That's not manipulation, that's understanding the core difference between love and attraction. Attraction needs energy, it needs tension. It needs feelings strong enough to override logic. Here's how you become her emotional drug. Don't just compliment, challenge. Don't just agree, playfully disagree. Don't just be there, disappear, then return with power. Don't just speak, say something that disrupts her comfort zone. Women want men who make them feel a full emotional spectrum. The fire, the mystery, the joy, the frustration, the heat, the stillness. Not chaos, but emotional motion. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be unforgettable. And unforgettable men leave a trail of emotion, not just a list of good traits. Be unpredictable in small ways. End conversations first. Change your plans. Surprise her with silence. Then show up stronger than before. Because once a woman is emotionally engaged, logic can't compete. She's already yours and she won't even understand why.